Hello, and welcome to the latest edition of Rotunda Report Live. My name is Lynne Davis, and I'm one of the lobbyists with the State Bar of Wisconsin. This week, I will be discussing the 2019-2020 legislative session and the initiatives the State Bar pursued. To start with, the session was largely completed by the time COVID-19 began to impact Wisconsin. The Assembly had completed their business, holding 20 session days, while the Senate held 13 days, with one floor period in late March canceled due to the pandemic. The Assembly introduced 1,038 bills, and the Senate offered 932 pieces of legislation. Governor Evers signed 186 bills into law and either fully or partially vetoed 22 bills. As I mentioned before, the Senate had nearly completed its scheduled business when things began to shut down, but they did have one business day remaining. As that has yet to happen, there are still over 100 Assembly bills that await Senate passage, as well as a few Senate bills that would need to receive a concurrence. It was a big year for the State Bar's legislative advocacy team, securing passage and funding of a number of our legislative priorities. The largest victory could be considered the 75% increase to the private bar rate, going from $40 an hour to $70 an hour. Along with that increase, the budget included pay progression for ADAs, 65 new ADA positions throughout the state, and $1 million in civil legal aid funding. The State Bar also advocated for a court expansion bill that resulted in 12 new circuit courts over the course of the next 3 years. Not only did the State Bar have a banner year in terms of legislative achievements, but the lobbying sections had major victories as well. The Children in the Law members participated in a study committee that produced Act 109, a minor guardianship bill that had been nearly 20 years in the making. RPPT also played a key role in drafting and passing a remote notary bill, and many other sections supported bills and were integral in the lobbying efforts that led to their enactment. When the Senate canceled their final scheduled floor period last spring, the big question was, what about the bills remaining in the Senate? After 6 months, the answer is, we just don't know. It's technically still possible for the Senate to reconvene and revive those remaining bills, but that has not yet happened, and there has been no indication it will at this time. The State Bar supports 2 bills that are in this precarious situation. The first is AB 33, an expungement bill that cleared the Assembly on voice vote. Another priority of the State Bar is the pay progression for state public defender attorneys. SB 468 awaits Senate concurrence before going to Governor Evers for enactment. One thing to note on this bill, however, there was an amendment that would eliminate the statutory authority of the Judicial Council added, something the State Bar opposes. So while we support the underlying bill, we would advocate for a partial veto to remove the amendatory language. In addition to the bills the State Bar supports that await Senate action, some bills that the lobbying sections support also remain in limbo. Family Law supports 2 bills from the Legislative Study Committee on Child Placement and Support. One involves custody modifications contingent upon future events, and the other allows judges to access CCAP records in domestic violence or child abuse cases. Criminal law also supports legislation that would provide up to a 6-week supply of medication upon release from prison, as well as a prescription for an additional 6 weeks of medication. The State Bar also supported other bills that didn't cross the finish line and are not in a position to be revived, but we are committed to these measures should they come before the legislature next session. With student loan debt continuing to be a significant concern for our members, and a rural lawyer shortage throughout many counties in Wisconsin, we will continue to aggressively support any and all bills that would grant both attorneys and Wisconsin communities relief. This year, that relief came in the form of AB 512, which would have granted up to $20,000 for attorneys who've performed criminal defense work in rural communities. The State Bar also supported a measure that would have created a prosecutor board and office to identify the needs of DAs and advocate for them to the legislature. AB 25 would allow prosecutors to do pro bono work as long as the services are not in a conflict of interest. And lastly, the State Bar supported AB 774, which prohibits the use of restraints on juveniles in court. Again, None of these bills progressed in the legislature, but we are hopeful to see these issues again in 2021. While there are many reasons people are looking forward to saying goodbye to 2020 and hello to 2021, the State Bar is looking forward to the upcoming year because we are hopeful to see our measures reintroduced next session. One we hope to see would return 17-year-olds to the juvenile court system. Also known as Second Chance, this is an initiative we have pursued for quite some time, but the legislation has always encountered roadblocks. However, we are hopeful for 2021, particularly because Governor Evers signaled his support for this measure in the past. The State Bar also supports compensation for those who are wrongfully convicted of a crime. Similar bills have been filed in past sessions with the State Bar backing, and we are hopeful a similar measure will be filed in 2021 for us to support. Lastly, we very much hope to see continued support from legislators on expungement and student debt relief, measures I mentioned previously. There is widespread bipartisan support for both of these measures, so we hope that in 2021, that bipartisan support grows and eventually leads to the passage of both of these much-needed bills. That brings this legislative wrap-up to a close. If you have questions, feel free to call me at 608-250-6045 or email me at ldavis@wisbar.org. You can also contact our other lobbyists at the State Bar, Cale Battles or Lisa Royce, the State Bar's Public Affairs Director, at the contact info listed. Please remember to subscribe to our Rotunda Report newsletter if you haven't already, and follow us on Twitter at SBW Rotunda RPT. You can also stay on top of our grassroots efforts at wisbar.org/govrelations. Thanks everyone, and we'll see you next time.